Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back, whee, to the Legion Beta as we continue our little melee journey here this week. Journey here this week. We are going to be looking at the Arms Warrior. This is not going to be an easy one for me to cover. Why? Depending on who you talk to, they either love or hate arms right now. And you'll be going, well, that's a really interesting thing. Why do people either love it or hate it? Is there something weird going on? The thing that's going on with arms is there is a huge variety in playstyles. Like a huge variety. It's actually quite impressive, honestly. And therefore, whichever playstyle people are leaning towards, depending on what their gameplay choices are actually in World of Warcraft, are they going to be top-end raiders all the way down the line? Is really dictating their opinion of the spec. What I will say is I totally agree that some playstyles that you can get out of arms are absolutely the worst thing of all time, and other ones are actually really enjoyable and take me back to a sort of Wrath of the Lich King Cataclysm style arms period of time. Although the spells have been reworked and renamed, they function in a very similar way. So that's what I'm going to try and cover today and explain them to you. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of fun here. I have had fun with the Arms Warrior. I've had a lot of fun with it. But at the same time, I've had some bad times. So what that means is if you're like a more top-end raider where your spec matters more, and the talent choices and stuff matter more, then you might find yourself trapped in a spec that's very different from the one you actually enjoy while still being within arms. And that's something you need to consider. So, with that said, the Arms Warrior is also one of the most reliant on its artifact weapon that I've played in the entire of Legion, honestly. A lot of the stuff that you find in the artifact weapons are basic shit, like slight DPS increases and stuff. Not so with the Arms Warrior. They actually have a significant impact. I only managed to get an hour or so on a more artifact-laden warrior this morning until I had to hand it back and move back to my own. This is a 110 character, but most of my artifact power is in Fury and not in arms. So I did some fishing, fish farming today and managed to get a couple of points in there, but not getting up to the stuff I really wanted to show you guys. But honestly, I'm pushed for time at this point. So let's have a look. You need to be aware of these because they're going to have dramatic effects. So the first one is the Shattered Defenses. So after you use Colossus Smash, your next Mortal Strike or Execute gains 30% increased critical strike chance and deals 30% increased critical damage, okay? You need to bear in mind that that mechanic is going to work every time you press Colossus Smash. Of course, Arms is very centric on Colossus Smash for the most part. No surprises there. If you've ever even touched Arms for the last, 5 years, you should be aware that that's where they're going with it. You also want to be aware of things like Precise Strikes. Colossus Smash reduces the rage cost of your next Mortal Strike or Execute by 15%, okay? So you have to bear in mind that when you hit Colossus Smash, there are a few things that are going to start kicking in, and those are things that you need to be aware of. Other artifact stuff that is around, but not really a big concern, is it doesn't overly affect your gameplay. Corrupted Blood with the Zakaz, I don't know, for 5 seconds after activating Battle Cry, okay, so this is your recklessness, essentially. Your Stromkar radiates shadowy energy, causing all attacks to deal an additional 20% damage over Shadow over 6 seconds. I played with this morning. It's not a bad amount of damage, and you need to be aware when you're pressing Battle Cry, what are you going to get out of that? Now, usually you're going to be doing something like Colossus Smash, Trinkets, whatever, Battle Cry, channel all your damage into massive Colossus Smashes, but you can also do it with a Blade Storm, which comes as standard for the Arms Warrior, okay? Arms Warriors get this. It's not a talent, you just get this thing. There's also Void Cleave, but honestly, when I tried this thing out, it was fucking boring, so I don't give a shit about it. When you cleave at least 3 targets, Stromkar does some damage. Hey! Okay. So, I'm rushing. I'm sorry, there's so much to cover here, just bear with me. We also need to be aware of things like Tacticians. Tactician's chance to trigger is increased as if you spent 10% more rage. So the big problem initially with the Arms Warrior, when I really hated it, was that you were reliant on Colossus Smash, but the only way to get Colossus Smash to reset out of this 45-second cooldown it has was to spam Slam. Okay, Slam had a chance to reset it, and Whirlwind. So they've changed that now to the new Tactician. You have a 0.65% chance per rage spent. So anything you press, this is really crucial, anything you press that costs rage now has a chance to reset Colossus Smash and Mortal Strike. And also your artifact weapon, once you get up to exploit the weakness, increases that by another 30%. This makes a significant difference than what you'll find once you hit the base level of 110. Without this stuff going on, it can really fuck you off this spec. Like, criminally be annoying. Because you could spend an entire 45 seconds waiting to get a Colossus Smash. That happens all the fucking time until you have that. It really is so frustrating, especially if you're in the execute phase. You must remember, warriors are the king of execute, and not these most prominent, I think, in the arms warrior. And that means that if you are in the execute phase and you do not have Colossus Smash up, mother of fucking Christ, do you want to take the spec, throw it in the bin, and stamp on it. But what I'm telling you is it does get better. That's something to be aware of. So let's look at the base abilities. Obviously, I've got a whole array of talents on here. Your base abilities are going to be Mortal Strike. They're going to be the Colossus Smash, obviously. Execute, Cleave, Pummel. You don't get Overpower as standard. You do have Charge, Heroic Leap, Heroic Throw. You do get Blade Storm as standard for all talent choices. No big deal there. Whirlwind. And what you'll notice is Whirlwind and Slam are basically your bottom end fillers for the most part. They're your rage dumps. But what you're trying to do, in most cases, alright guys, and of course Slam, is get your Colossus Smash debuff on and then put as much damage into it as humanly possible. So that's something you'll be very familiar with in terms of Mr. Pandaria style gameplay. However, the talent system has allowed you to alter that a little bit if you want to. Your filler spell, or your extra artifact ability, I should say, is Warbreaker. You stomp the ground, causing a ring of corrupted spikes to erupt upwards, dealing 75,000 shadow damage, and applying the Colossus Smash effect to all nearby enemies. This is a really cool idea. I love this. One Colossus Smash Blade Storm is funny, and also, if you do run into these periods of time where Colossus Smash is not resetting, you can always use it single target. Looks ace, gives you Colossus Smash. Excellent. And as you can see, Colossus Smash at the moment, my card is 55% additional damage. It's a big fucking deal. It's a seriously big deal to get Colossus Smash on. So, what if you hate that? What if you like that? Let's look at the talents and kind of figure out the different playstyles on offer with the Arms Warrior, and then we'll talk about some of the issues you could run into. So, Dauntless, your abilities cost 20% less rage. Rage management is actually something that's prevalent throughout Arms from when I've been playing it. You can play specs that have loads and loads of rage, or you can play specs that allow you to focus a little bit more tactically on your rage usage and include other abilities to keep your rage managed as well. This is actually a really cool thing, and Dauntless is the beginning of that process. What I found is Arms Warrior, honestly, it has a lot of thinking going on behind it if you want to go down that road. I don't want to put people off and say, oh god, it's one of those sort of fiddly aspects. It doesn't have to be, but it absolutely has the choice to go down there for the guys who are a bit more technically minded and really like lining things up. Although I would point out that there's a lot of damage stacking involved with Arms Warriors where it's all kind of mounting up on each other, and that's something you need to be aware of. So, Dauntless, nothing much to say there other than 20% less rage. You can kind of put that into every iteration you want. Overpower. So, Overpower is back. It's a talent. I love the Overpower playstyle. So, let me put something on the table with you right now. I hated the Colossus Smash Window Warrior. I really disliked it. I never liked having these sort of up and down troughs and peaks of greatness and then waiting to set it up again and then sort of like splurging my Bukkake all over the fucking face of the target whenever Colossus Smash was there. I never particularly enjoyed that. I don't really like that kind of playstyle. And luckily, we don't have to play that way. So, Overpower is still in the game. Wonderful. Without this, okay, if we go with things like... I have my tomes. If I go with things like Dauntless or Fervor for Battle, these are all taking abilities off my bars, like Double Time, etc., etc. You really have very few abilities. You just have, if you're a single target team, you just have Mortal Strike, Colossus Smash, Execute, and you have Slam, pretty much. That's all your single target abilities. Very, very few. And then you can add them back in this way. So adding in Overpower, overpowers the enemy, blah blah blah, does what Overpower always has done, doesn't stack like Taste for Blood Time. All your melee attacks have a chance to activate Overpower, which is wonderful. Gives you a nice ability, nice and chunky, nice thing to throw in. I love the Overpower playstyle, my favourite so far. Sweeping Strikes is here, but it's just Mortal Strike and Execute, hit a second nearby target. Obviously, being the king of Execute, this is kind of a big deal. And all the bonuses I just showed you through the artifact weapon make Mortal Strike very, very, very tasty in a lot of scenarios as well. So you need to bear in mind that it's probably pretty powerful, although it's way less fun than the old Sweeping Strikes. It's got to be said, way less fun. I would rather have the old Sweeping Strike back any single day. At level 30, it might seem odd that Double Time's in here, but it's not. So we get Shockwave, AoE stun, Stormbolt, the single target, as you well know, doing nowhere near as much single target damage as it used to, sad times. But double tag gives you extra charges. That's actually not bad. It reduces the cooldown as well. The thing is, charge is actually a very viable thing to do to keep generating rage in periods where you're like Colossus Smash is on cooldown, you don't really have anything else to do but slam, and you don't actually have much rage. As I said, you can go with specs that have a lot of rage or specs that don't have much rage, and you have to manage it more. Double time plays into that spec quite nicely. So if you go with a very rageless generation, so you're not taking things like Dauntless and all this kind of stuff, or in for the kill, which we'll get to shortly, then you'll probably end up realizing that you have less rage, and you'll be fishing for, and by fishing I mean you're looking to get Colossus Smash to reset like it did then. And in those scenarios, you can run out of rage. Obviously, I've been auto-attacking for a while, I've built it up, and I have Dauntless right now. So what you'd be doing is like, oh, I don't really want to use my Mortal Strike yet, because I've got Colossus Smash. What should I do? You can pop out and very easily charge back in and keep topping your rage up and get 2 charges of that as well. It's very, very cool once you realize that this is actually DPS increase and also a mobility increase. So I like the idea that this is getting double use, really. Further for battle then, Whirlwind deals 50% increased damage to your primary target. This does replace Slam in favor of Whirlwind, single target even. Whether or not the numbers, and I always remind you guys of this, I'm talking about how I believe the spec is supposed to be played. Okay, so further for battle for me means that there's a fight with plenty of adds. Yeah, so you're going to be using a lot more Whirlwind, and therefore you could drop Slam away because you'll be picking up the damage elsewhere. So I don't really care about what the damage numbers in the beta are right now, because that's what Blizzard is currently changing on a mere focus basis. That could alter in a time scale. What I'm saying to you is further for battle means that you can drop Slam in favor of a fight with a lot of adds, and your Whirlwind will still deal bonus damage to the boss target, yeah? So you've been in those scenarios where you've got the boss in front of you, adds all around it, you're going to be doing a lot of AoE, and that really benefits you there. Rend, obviously, we could pick that up. So my favorite playstyle, I'll just let you know right now, is Overpower and Rend in the target. In the fight, love this. Avatar is so Rend is Rend, right? Nothing for me to tell you about that. Rend is Rend. Avatar, transform into Colossus, is a flat damage buff. Again, this damage stacking idea coming back into play. Very boring now. Would love to see Avatar mixed into something else and just not being a flat fucking damage buff. It's boring, unfortunately. That's always going to be my problem with Avatars. It's just boring compared to some of the other things. For what it looks like, especially, it looks so cool. I always loved the early visualization and the graphics of Avatar, but it is just what it is. Second wave, Bounding Stride and Defensive Stance are all defensives. Nothing to worry about there in terms of deeps. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. This tier is like... this is the bane of my existence, and according to the people I've been speaking to on Skype this morning, good God, they hate it as well. So, in for the kill. Mortal Strike generates 20 rage when used against targets that are below 20% health. So, that seems to make a lot of sense if you're going to have a very solid execute phase. You can already probably picture something like a Twin Emperor boss, and you pick up Sweeping Strike, so your execute is naturally cleaving, and you've got something like in for the kill, so you're getting more and more rage to do bigger and bigger executes. Obviously, execute chews up extra rage for additional damage, etc., etc. The problem I've had with it is it's a mechanical thing. It sucks the rage off first, and then it refunds you, which means there's a clunkiness while that process actually occurs. But other than that, it is what it is, and it does work. I mean, it's workable, right? Is it a big problem? Not really. Not really. It's something you can work around. Focus Mortal Combo is what I've been going to, because so you're not doing that much content that requires in for the kill, generally speaking. Mortal Combo is what I go to, because that gives you 2 charges of Mortal Strike. You'll notice Colossus Smash has no charges. It's just the single spell, yeah? So 1 charge if you want to be technical on that. But it can all reset. Mortal Strike can be reset and Colossus Smash can be reset. That means that you kind of have to dump them. And Colossus Smash should be, in theory, something you really think about. But the problem is you can get resets on any melee attack. So I would really like Colossus Smash to actually have 2 charges. And Mortal Combo works really well into that as well. And plus it gives you a Mortal Strike to be filling in while waiting for the Colossus Smash reset. Mortal Combo works really nicely for me and allows the gameplay to be a little bit more fluid and feel a little bit smoother without being like, I must really press the things that aren't lit up, right? You guys have all been there. Press all the things. It does take the edge off that a little bit. Focused Rage, then. Ugh. So we don't have Heroic Strike, obviously. So what they've come up with is Focused Rage off the global cooldown, where you focus your rage onto the next Mortal Strike. It increases its damage by up to 50%, stacking 3 times, so 150%, unaffected by the global cooldown. So instead of Heroic Strike, they've come up with this. It's just so fiddly and frustrating and really doesn't... I just hate the way it consumes rage and you're managing these stacks and stuff. It's not terrible, in my opinion. It's not terrible. I had somebody going absolutely berserk about Focus Rage today. I played with it for a few hours. It wasn't the end of the world, but it's not fun. That's got to be said. I would prefer Heroic Strike. I would prefer Heroic Strike as something extra to be throwing into Colossus Smash windows. That plays nicely for me, but it is an extra difference. It's just that Mortal Combo for me just makes the whole spec so much smoother and plays so much nicer with itself and with its own internal mechanics. Deadly Calm. So this is going to reduce the range of all costs of your abilities by 100% for the duration. So now you'll see with a more build that with builds that have a lot more range on offer to make a lot more choices, especially if you don't want to be jumping around and doing charges stuff. Similar to a Demon Hunter style of play, where if you don't want to be dancing all over the place and backflipping and doing all that, and you don't need the extra mobility, you can go with a ton of extra rage builds to be much more sort of spammy with your damaging abilities. Deadly Calm just gives you like your battle cry executes, and you can imagine that, yeah? You're obviously going to be setting up for battle cry colossus smash executes, and they're going to cost no rage cost in those windows as well. Very, very cool. Trauma, adding a bleed effect to slam and whirlwind, cause the target to bleed for 20% additional damage over 6 seconds. Multiple uses accumulate increased damage. Okay, so if you're doing a lot of slamming and whirlwinding, particularly if you picked up things like for battle, where you're going to be doing a lot of AoE, or you don't have overpowering rend, so you're going to have more uses out of slam, trauma comes in really nicely. You can see how all these specs play so differently. It's absolutely insane. They play so differently. Titanic Might has recently been changed and now really plays into my favorite playstyle with overpowering rend, where I'm not just looking for these smaller Colossus Smash windows. Increase the duration of Colossus Smash by 16 seconds, but reduces effectiveness by 30%. I love this, because I don't like the Colossus Smash playstyle, right? And that's what it should come down to in the end. Obviously, when you're raiding top end and stuff, it won't really matter. You'll be looking more to what gives the best results. But for everybody else, here's your option to enjoy ARMS as the big meaty fucker that it is. ARMS is all about big giant numbers. So if you don't like setting up for little Colossus Smash windows, Titanic Might is now a very inviting option. You can mix it with overpower and stuff, and you have a whale of a time. I've been having much more fun with using Titanic Might than anything else. Down to then, anger management. Every 10 rage you spend reduces the remaining cooldown. Battle Cry, of course, you get more executes and more Colossus Smash windows. That plays really nicely. Opportunity Strikes. Your melee abilities have a 6% chance to base on attacks. Missing Hell, so this triggers more as it gets as you more kill to trigger an extra attack that deals some damage. And Ravager still managed to make the cut. Replaces Blade Storm, okay? So you can now throw it down. 1 minute cooldown. Yeah, 1.5 minute cooldown for Blade Storm. So you can tie that into what is going to be spawning AoE style and all that kind of stuff. Really works out quite nicely. So now I've managed to get through that. Ugh, my voice. What you can see here is the Arms Warrior has a plethora of ways to play it. And it's bare bones. This spec is all about big, fat, juicy numbers. Yeah, Colossus Smash on. Chunk, Colossus Smash resets, chunk, big hell, Colossus Smash reset, chunk. Try and get some more resets, and off you go to the races, yeah? Reset, chunk. As you can see, the resetting's not a big deal. It's not. You can have some good fun with it, and you can choose, do you want to manage your rage more effectively? Do you want to manage your abilities? Do you want to manage buffs and debuffs more effectively? And the talent rows aren't the end of the world. They're really not. If you don't want to do that, the other options actually play into different synergies quite nicely. Overall, I'm giving ARMS a thumbs up. I am. This is significantly better than anything I played in WoD. For me, it's also better than Cataclysm, but if you liked Kata, it still has that kind of playstyle in there in some form, right? If you were there, whichever point, I think my conclusion to this is, whichever point you really enjoyed ARMS, Legion has something that should appeal to you in some way, right? It won't be perfect, it's not going to be an exact duplicate, but it should appeal to you in some way. Now, I think the only way I can really demonstrate this is with a gameplay video. I'm hoping to have that out today, but I'm not guaranteeing it because I have quite a lot to do with PreachCon coming up, and we're working on another video to go out today as well. So I will get that out to you this week. But overall, thumbs up. Thumbs up. I would only be concerned with ARMS if I were you, if you are somebody who's very top end, and some of these playstyles really don't appeal to you, like at all. And the thought of playing it and thinking back to what happened with the end of Worlds of Draenor, where you're pressing 2 buttons, that kind of thing really sort of worries you, then it might not be for you. But for everybody else, there's something here to enjoy. There's something definitely here to enjoy. Alright guys, thank you so much for listening. I'm really happy to give this a thumbs up. I've been pretty happy with it. I've actually had a lot of fun with it. I'll see you again. Bye-bye.